what you recommend to people, firstly, who have suffered from concussion, maybe in the past, and it's distorted their mood or cognitive performance. And then afterwards, we'll go to long COVID with a similar question. But let's start with concussion.
I think one of the first things, and if anyone listening takes anything away from this, when it comes to concussion, we need to move right away from this idea of, oh, you took a hit to the head, sit in a dark room, don't speak to anyone, completely go into hibernation for 2 weeks. Somehow that is still advice that is being thrown out there, and that sort of advice needs to go. We're well beyond that now, and what we need to do is think about activity as tolerated from day one to make sure that we don't cause any additional issues. But that's a pet peeve that I had to get out the way early when we talk about concussion.
Where did that come from, David? Sorry, that sort of myth.
I think that it was kind of the overabundant. It's an evolution of this overabundance of caution of, like, if you take a hit to the head and you're concussed, of course you could have a brain bleed. And so then you're going to be photophobic. You're going to be, going into all sorts of serious medical consequences as a result of a brain bleed. And we need to get you to the hospital, get a CT scan, and do a surgery if indicated to relieve the pressure on your brain. And so I think early on, people said, well, okay, if you've taken a hit to the head, you need to stay in a dark room because you don't want to stimulate any of those terrible symptoms that could come from a brain injury. Whereas, well, if you're that sick, you should be in the hospital immediately getting a CT scan. You shouldn't be sitting in a dark room hiding from it. And if you're not that sick, then a different set of rules apply. As I said, I need to temper that with activity is tolerated, because anyone who has had a concussion will attest to the fact that the first few hours to even days after a concussion sometimes can be really rough. And so you need to be extremely careful about not overextending what you're doing and managing, checking in with yourself, managing your symptoms, making sure that you're doing okay. So, these are the sorts of lines that need to be walked. And this is why, in my opinion, concussion research and concussion clinical care suffers so much, because everyone wants a protocol, right? Everyone wants, tell me precisely what to do so I can replicate it and I can turn it into a factory and I can, sell it as a pipeline. But concussion doesn't work that way. What you need to do is, we need personalized care. And I mean, across the board, we need personalized care, but there are certain conditions, concussion, long COVID, where you need to be even more focused on treating the person in front of you, hearing what they're saying. I mean, when it comes to a concussion, you're going to have different symptoms based on which part of your brain got hit, and often that's not even considered by a treating professional. You rarely even, often when you go to a clinic, I hit my head, well, tell me what happened, basic history, subjective history. But when you think about it, you don't actually really go into the mechanics of, okay, well, which way did your head go? And did you bounce back? And do you feel like you have whiplash, and so on and so forth? These things kind of get left out of the examination. So when we're dealing with a concussion, we try to be as objective as possible. I'll start from the very beginning, which is, we manage the care of hundreds of school kids and young adults. And so wherever possible, we already have baseline measurements on the people that we're seeing. So we understand what is normal for them. Because there's nothing more frustrating, especially for a high performance athlete, when they sustain a concussion and they come to me and they say, I'm concussed and I'm not thinking the way I used to. And you send them to a neuropsychologist to get a full cognitive battery. And the neuropsychologist says, well, yeah, they're scoring within normal limits. And the athlete says, I'm not within normal limits. I'm a high performance athlete. And you see the neuropsychologist writing down, okay, narcissist. And, and I'm sitting there going, no, this is the best fencer in the world, and he probably should not be scoring normal in reaction time and, executive function. And so obviously having a baseline mitigates that, because you can say, well, this is where you were before. I don't care what's normal, quote unquote normal. I just care where you were before and where you are now.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.